Welcome back, everybody, to the Vorello Vision Podcast, where we have industry leaders, founders, entrepreneurs, and individuals. I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Graham Skidmore, who's doing amazing work in their industry. I'm excited to have Graham on today because he has a different mindset and approach on AI, and I'm very excited for not only me to hear it, but also everybody else watching to hear it as well. So, Graham, thanks for coming on. Could you explain, what you do for those who may not know you?
Yeah, Jet, first of all, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess, in the context of this discussion and the message you're wanting to get across to your viewers, look, my approach with AI is a little bit different than what, is kind of the mainstream or what's out there, right? A lot of what's out there today says, hey, humans are tapped out, we're done. The only way that we can get ahead, the only way that our future is going to be any brighter and better is if we decide to give up our agency, give up our decision making, and become dependent upon, a handful of AI companies and their products. Well, based on me and my experiences and my belief in the human potential, I'm like, well, that doesn't really fit real well with me. So we've got to. So instead, what I think we should be doing, and I think a brighter future for humans is a human-centric future where we use AI as a tool, and we use AI as a tool to increase human agency, where we use it to create individualized support and to focus on, making the human the best human it can be through empowerment, not dependency. So as opposed to AI that says, hey, here's what you should be doing, and it's a one size fits all model, my approach is more like, hey, let me connect you with information, but then let me provide you, for lack of a better description, a series of questions or decision trees that help you to figure out how to make sense of that information, how to turn it into actionable information, what to do with it, based on your situation, and your goals.
Yeah. For sure. Thanks for sharing that. And before I dive into like what kind of got you interested in this type of like work and what you're doing in the past, do you feel like a lot of companies who are AI first right now are relying on AI too much and putting humans to the side? Do you feel like that's the majority of companies right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, frankly, I think what I see going on right now, frankly, what I see going on right now is very insulting to the human race.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
literally, right? I mean, the a lot of the conversation about how quickly AI is going to overcome the intelligence of humans. Well, first of all, without the intelligence of humans that put all of the content out there, there would be no AI, right? There would
Yeah.
be no learning models, right? So it's very that part, that aspect drives me nuts. But the other part of it is, yeah, I also think that as wonderful and transforming of a tool as AI can be, and as a supporting tool, if it currently just keeps the limited uses to increasing margins and profitability, we're really missing the whole boat, and we're really missing the opportunity.
Yeah. I agree because there's so many things that AI or artificial intelligence can do. And I think it's really just what the company or the business owner or individual, you know, chooses, how to use it. They're like you said with like margins or, saving time, increasing revenue, cool. But if you're doing it in the way of replacing hundreds or even thousands of humans in your company, what's the point? It's almost like disrespecting humanity at a certain point. AI wouldn't even be a thing for if it wasn't for us. So why are we trying to make it overcome us? You
That's
know?
right. Yeah, and I think that, again, I think it's very short, this whole either or, right? It's either AI or humans is really a miss, and is really a short-sighted approach. It really needs to be, how do we use AI and humans, right? How do we
Yeah.
use AI to take care of the busy work so that humans can leverage their subject matter expertise to do the work that really matters, right?
Yeah.
And there's just not, I just don't feel like there's enough talk about that out there.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if it was you or somebody else I was chatting with here recently. Somebody said something along the lines of if companies used AI to help their employees more rather than replacing them, AI could just be so much better, because if we learn how to use it correctly, but then just say, hey, whether it's your employee or whoever's working for you or your coworker, whoever it is, say, hey, here's AI, here's what we can do with it. You can use this to make your job easier and it can help us as a company as well. We're not going to replace you with the AI, but you should use AI to, help your job just in this some way, shape, or form. Right. I don't think replacing humans is like a good approach at all. Unless it's like absolutely, needed for like one or two people that aren't really doing their jobs. Obviously you need to get the
Yeah.
slackers out of there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that some sort of a restructuring or job loss is inevitable, but I don't want, when I say job loss, I should probably say maybe transferring to different roles, right? Because, as companies leverage technology to gain efficiencies, look, I think that, whether if it's a public company, then shareholders should really have some hard questions for the board. If the board can't think of a better use of humans, right? If the best path forward for your business is skinning things down through efficiencies and removing people and just using AI to increase margins, you got to ask, well, where's the vision, right?
Yeah.
Where's your innovation? Where's your invention? And that's really where then you should be leveraging your humans. So, take your humans that were maybe doing some busy work that you could replace with AI. Now let's have them focusing on problem solving, generating revenue, or other items that are, that are going to really create meaningful value to the organization, its shareholders, and its employees.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Now, I guess my question would be like, what drew you into the type of work you're doing? But before you explain that, could you explain to the audience and even me a little bit more on, some of the ventures you have going on right now?
Yeah, so I've kind of got as we mentioned here, I take a different approach to AI, and so one of the things that I've recognized that I need to do in order to get a little bit of traction with my perspective is come up with some use cases, some demonstrations, some proof of concepts to
Yeah.
show how there's more incremental gains to be had by taking the and approach as opposed to the either or approach with humans and AI. So I've kind of got three ventures that are running in parallel paths. SATH Technology is where my technology, my IP, my education systems, all that stuff lives.
Right.
But then I've got two nonprofits that I'm working with that act as the proof of concepts, et cetera. And the first one where we're starting out is in the health and wellness space. And for a variety of reasons, I'm starting out in the health and wellness space, and that's the Harmony Health Institute. And that's where I'm focusing on providing education, tools, systems, and community that's focused on giving power to the people. And,
Yeah.
so everything that I'm focused on is also about giving power back to the people. And that's also a very different approach than, what governments and what institutions and businesses are looking at with their current use of AI and products.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like you said, that's different than what most companies are doing with like AI and their workers or whatever it is. I think it's like most things in the healthcare industry. I don't want this to come off wrong to anybody, but I honestly think that the healthcare industry is just they're just trying to really make a penny off everything and like anything and everything. So for somebody like you to have, SATH Technology, for things that could help a lot with your company or other companies, but then also having that nonprofit that provides some kind of healthcare education is something like we don't really have much in today's world, unfortunately. Because like I said, I feel like everybody in the healthcare industry is trying to make a penny, some way, shape, or form, and not always that it's a bad thing, but. I go somewhere right now to get, healthcare knowledge or something, done to my own body, it's thousands and thousands of dollars. And I'm very grateful that insurance can cover some of that. But at the same time, it's still like these companies don't actually care about people. But could you share a little bit more into detail on what Harmony Institute is like doing or is going to be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's and thank you for asking. I didn't want to go too much down a rabbit hole early on in the conversation unless you wanted to go there.
Right, right.
One of the big things that as a result of, my personal journey that I've come to understand and kind of anchor everything into is that, over the last 8 years of my journey, one of the things I recognize is that the systems are broken, not the people.
Mm.
Right. And that we all have individualized physiologies, but we exist inside this one size fits all system and set of beliefs, right? That essentially treats us as just a bunch of biomarkers and managing of symptoms, right? Like to your point,
Yeah.
right? And Western medicine is great at helping to manage symptoms. You know what I mean? You need a pill for something, you need a pain reliever, right? So it's not about, Western approach versus Eastern approach versus indigenous approaches versus spiritual approaches. But the problem lies in when the person doesn't know which one should I be doing, when and how, and then how do they all work together as opposed to, being in conflict with each other. And so helping people to understand themselves, when to use what modality, how to get the modalities to work together so that the
Mm.
person can achieve their quality of life goals is what we focus on.
Okay. Yeah. So you guys just give people just a better understanding of what like they really need, right? For better quality of life.
Yeah. And so, look, there are some people that believe, hey, humans are strictly limited to five senses. There are other people that believe that humans, have more than five senses. right?
Yeah.
And so my approach is, hey, regardless of which way you decide that you believe, you should still be supported as an individual based on your individualized physiology, and whether that's, individualized physiology from a spiritual approach, from a gender approach, ethnicity, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
If this one size fits all approach worked, we wouldn't be, we'd see much better results around us, right? So I think we all know that the system can be better. And so again, that's where my focus is. Hey, let's help to understand where, the one size fits all resonates with you, and then where are your outliers, and then how do we build. Then the second part of that is, once we understand what you need and how what you need is not being serviced within these one size fits all systems, now then we build a system around you, right?
Yeah.
We connect you with the various practitioners, traditional, non-traditional, and then give you the additional educational materials and tools to help you figure out yourself and become comfortable in your own skin. And the more comfortable you are in your own skin, the better you know yourself, then the better you can ask for what you need for your needs to be met.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. What if you could just give us a brief high level overview of, I mean, I know this, you've kind of tied everything together, which I really like, but if you could just give us a brief overview of like what really got you into this type of work. Was it something that happened like in the past, or maybe the past couple of years, or are you just seeing certain companies not doing this, or why are you, passionate about, the Harmony, Health Institute, like all of that stuff? Like what about it like made you really want to do that?
Yeah, this comes from all from personal lived experience. I spent the first 21 years of my professional career, or actually I should say the first 42 years of my life, understanding myself through a quote unquote normal, lens,
Yeah.
albeit kind of, quirky or, eccentric. And, at the height of my corporate career, and, I was also at the height of my misery. I said, this is ridiculous. I played the game of life the way that I was supposed to. I checked the boxes. I earned the income. I was in the C-suite of a 20,000 person organization, right? I got the house, I got the car, I got the country club membership, yada, 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 right? All of
Yeah.
the things that are supposed to be measurements of success, and say, if you do these things, you're going to be happy. Well, unfortunately, for me, I wasn't happy whatsoever, right? I didn't
Yeah.
even recognize who I was anymore. So after I left my corporate career, I said, this is crazy. I can't go on like this anymore. So I'm not going to get started on my next set of professional career until I can figure out what's going on with me. So then I started down this path of my own healing, right? And so then I started to understand myself, going to see doctors and otherwise. And then, they diagnosed me with a variety of things that fall underneath the neurodivergence category. So I was like, all right, cool. Now I'm starting to understand myself a little bit better. I'm getting a new vernacular. It was very helpful in certain ways, but then it also became very limiting.
Yeah.
Because, right, the same way that words can lift us up, if we start to place limitations on us based on labels, well, then that boxes us in, and that's one of the things that I refuse to be limited. So I said, okay, well, this was cool, but this isn't all that there is. So then I started to understand myself through an Eastern lens, a spiritual lens, an indigenous lens. And only after I started to understand myself, right, as a neurotypical masking, neurodivergent, spiritually gifted, and then through the, Eastern, Western, indigenous, and spiritual lenses, did I recognize that these, why I wasn't able to get my needs met, and understanding myself through the lenses that were available to me. And so, and also as a result of that, along the way, as I became more comfortable in my own skin, as I got to know myself, I unlocked different gifts and abilities and wisdom and intelligence, and became much more happy and peaceful. And so, had you asked me these questions, when we were talking about AI, 10 years ago, I would be with the status quo, right? I'd be telling you how easily we should be replacing humans. And, and I actually got accused at one time of, what was it? What did Tim say? I was trying to robocize the sales force,
Yeah.
through workflows and systems and things like that. And that wasn't the case, but, I was definitely misunderstood. But as a result of recognizing that there's so much more to the human potential than what we're led to believe just through strictly this Western lens, I said, that's really what led me down this path of saying, look, I'm not a snowflake in the sense of I'm the only one whose most awesome self was trapped below the guilt, the fears, the shame, the anxiety, all of that stuff that inhibits us from being our best selves. And so
Yeah.
and so for me, when I think about the future, I think, look, humans and tapping into consciousness is, and having that human centric approach, with AI as a tool to help us get there and to help the humans evolve. To me, that's where that lived experience is how I came to changing my approach, changing my perspectives, designing the products, designing the education, and the systems that I did. That that's kind of, and now I'm just starting to, after 8 years of strictly figuring this out, working on myself, I'm now poking my head back out and ready to re-enter the world.
Yeah. No, I actually really, really respect and appreciate you sharing that because that's something that a lot of people don't dive into too much. And I think, like you said, you pretty much succeeded in the corporate America type, bubble. And props to you for doing that, but it led to you not even being happy. You wanted to tap into more of like who yourself actually was, and that's awesome. I kind of am trying to work on that myself, just being 20 years old, like transparently enough. Yeah, I have a 2-year-old son. I've been through some crazy gnarly things. I've seen some crazy gnarly things. I've also been through some really good things, whatever the case is. But like you said, you had the house, you had the car, you had the country club membership, like all of that stuff, and you just felt like there was like a missing piece, essentially,
A lot of
and
missing pieces. Yeah.
a lot of missing pieces, right? It's like this, it's like almost like this giant, this. I kind of look at it as like a giant missing piece, but it's like a puzzle at the same time. So it's like a
That's
puzzle,
right.
but then the puzzle is not completed until you actually tap into your own consciousness, do what you're doing now, and creating what you are now, which is freaking awesome. I like the transparency, like you actually shared, like, yeah, I had this, I had that, but I really wasn't happy because people are so caught up on, oh, I need this, I need that, when they're trying to fill a void that's not even there when they need to focus on the true, puzzle piece. So in terms of education and projects and service support, everything you're doing now, what's some big goals over the next year that you're trying to accomplish with your SATH technology, but also your nonprofit at Harmony?
Yeah, so right now a lot of my goals focus more around Harmony Health and creating the proof of concepts, the use cases, because part of my focus is we should be investing in humans right now, right? But as long as we
Yeah.
believe that humans are, we've kind of tapped out, it's hard to make the case why we should be investing in individual support and things like that. So first I need to,
Yep.
not just me, but and there's plenty of, believe me, my story is no different. There's plenty of people out there with very similar stories of, healing,
Yeah.
understanding themselves and blah, blah, blah. Right. And
Yeah.
so the more that we can get momentum behind that, though, the more as a society, we can make a case for that using technology to provide individualized support, even in, anyway, and so my first and so as I'm getting started, my first goal is, it's, as a nonprofit, I'm out going through fundraising, right? So I need to, raise funds to continue to expand and grow what I've been self-funding and doing and getting us up to this point in time. We were launching a pilot program to help us establish some of those use cases as well. Um,
Mm.
and then from there, my next phase is, I've got a book that I'm writing to continue to explain, a little bit the human experience from a consciousness perspective and why we should be investing even using technology to help humans to tap into their consciousness and their collective consciousness. Right? If you think about, a large language model as, the accumulation of data and information that, is out there. Well, so's the collective consciousness, right? It just happens to be, spiritual versus technical, right?
Yeah.
But when you're tapping into it spiritually, it's empowered and it's individual, and it doesn't cost you money, and you don't have to become dependent upon something else. Where when it's technical, you have to become dependent upon something else,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
that's a lot of my current focus. And when I talk about restoring power to the people, is demonstrating how, even though when we look around, it's easy to feel like our power has been taken from us, or that, it's easy to feel helpless. That's not the case. We just have lost, here, especially in in the Western perspective, we've just lost touch with a lot of the things that are, tools that are inherently available to us.
Yeah. No, I agree. Fundraising is cool for sure, especially for nonprofits. And I know you and I talked about this separately on the side, and I think that you can get quite a bit of, not only individuals but also whoever else that actually believes in this stuff and supports it to actually, invest or do whatever with your new company, which is awesome, yeah, because you're doing it for a good cause. And I wouldn't say I think about this every day. I don't want to over exaggerate it, but in terms of the AI stuff and like losing touch with reality through humanity. I think about it very often in terms of, okay, I'm 20, I'm starting my own company, I have a kid, 5, 10, 20 years from now, is everybody just going to be relying on AI to operate through the day of their life. Like if they can't have critical thinking, they have to go to their phone and search ChatGPT, or they have to do this, they have to do that. And like you said, it's cool for certain use cases, but if we're relying on that as humans who are not meant to do that because we have consciousness, it literally removes that consciousness and makes us almost like zombies, you know?
Bingo.
And I honestly think that I can't, I don't know. I don't want to say too much in terms of like higher ups in the world, but I think that their goal is to just wipe out certain people and individuals so that they have more control. And I think AI is a part of that plan, unfortunately. I'm not afraid to spread the truth. I don't care who's watching this right now, honestly. And I really think that, or I really hope that people like you and I and your company and whatever can get out there more in terms of letting people know, like, hey, you're a human, you have consciousness, use AI all you want to help you in whatever way, shape, or form, but just realize you do not need it. You're a human, right? So cool, technology, business, acceleration in certain aspects of life, cool, whatever. But don't rely on it 100% of the time. It's super unhealthy, you
Yeah, I
know?
mean, for those that are familiar with Star Trek, right? There's the Borg. Are you familiar with the Borg from Star Trek? You
I'm
know,
not.
okay, that's
No.
good. That's it's a bit of an old, I don't know how, a little bit of an older movie. Anyway, but
Okay.
essentially it comes from a hive mind, right? Which means we all think the same. And there's the queen, and it's a combination of biology and technology mixed together, right?
Right.
And so as a result of that, they can get rid of the unproductive feelings, that guilt, that shame, they necessarily not feeling in general, which to some people, like you said, it could be very appealing. But the
Yeah.
problem is, in a hive mind, you're all supposed to think the same, and that individuality is lost. So one of and look, and there are plenty of people who feel like, hey, yeah, that sounds like an awesome future to us. You know what I mean? Give me some,
Yeah.
give me an exoskeleton. Let me get rid of, the unproductive emotions that hold me back, like fear or anxieties, things like that. And then I'll give up my left arm, and make it a gun or whatever else. I don't know. Right?
Oh, yeah.
But that's not my thing. And I think that you're going to, and I'm anticipating the same way that we have very severe political divides. I'm anticipating a very severe divides among society regarding what's the best path forward for humanity. And you're going to have one path that's very focused on, AI, and then you're going to have one path that's much more focused on consciousness. And
Yeah.
I think that you're going to see a lot of rubs, a lot of challenges, and it's going to be um, a very challenging learning process for humanity to go through. That in some cases, the only way the learning can occur is just by touching the stove and realizing it's hot, right? I mean, there's just
Yeah.
some, experiential learning is just in some cases the only way to figure it out. And so I think, we're going to have to go through some bumps and bruises along the way. But if we don't have more people like how you and I are talking about investing in humanity, if we don't have enough people talking about why we should be investing in humanity, then we're already rolling over and giving up and allowing the AI aspect, to be the dominant narrative and essentially
Yeah.
kind of take over by default because there's a lack of other choices for people, right? And
Yeah.
so I kind of take it as part of my responsibility is providing another set of choices for people, and then the education to help people make the best decisions for themselves. And then it's ultimately, look, they got their free will, so it's up to them to decide which path they choose. My job is just to give them the best education and ways to make decisions for themselves.
Yeah. All you can do is like plant that seed, keep watering it, inform them, give them the education, the resources, the knowledge. They'll take, they'll do what they want with it, right? You can't force
Yeah,
somebody to do anything, but obviously the goal is to like inform people like, hey, like you're a human. Like I understand AI is on the rise, but you need to chill out. Like you're a human. Realize that 20, 30 years from now, like things could be the exact same as how you're living in your body right now, except you could just use AI to accelerate just a little bit here and there. Like,
that's
just
right.
I just wish people would quit thinking like it's gonna be some whole like 5, 10 years from now, like we're gonna have, robots controlling absolutely anything and everything. And I honestly am worried about that as well. But at the end of the day, people like you and your company, like as long as you're spreading the right information, it just needs to get out there, And that leads me to my next, not to ramble too much, but that leads me to my next sort of like question. Of course, no path is easy, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little simple, but it's not easy. So whether it's you, many, many years ago when you were in corporate America and you had, that missing piece or a lot of missing pieces, or
Yeah.
it's to you even to when you realize you need to do something different, all the way to now, to where you're building something that's awesome. Like what has been some of the biggest struggles like early on, and then the realization, and then the building process?
Oh boy, struggles. Look, I mean, I've had to totally change my understanding of what my reality was, what my understanding of myself was. I had to do a lot of hard work looking in the mirror. Here, without getting too philosophical, here's an example of, as part of, my healing, one of the things that I had to, in retrospect and looking back on my life, I had to realize, yeah, I was the asshole in some of these situations, right?
Yeah. Right.
Right. And and I was wrong, right? And
Yeah.
instead, when I was defensive and sticking up for myself, now from there though, I have two paths that I can look at that. I can look at that and go and beat myself up and say how I made these mistakes. And, wow, I wish I could have done things differently. Or I can look at it and I can also say, wow, look at the grace that people gave me. Look at the support that people gave me. Look how much people still cared about me. Now, it's unfortunate that I didn't recognize it at the time, but wow, how
Yeah.
cool that was, right? That
Yeah.
humans actually were there for me and I didn't realize it. And so, it was like, hey, these people saw things in me that I wasn't going to give myself credit for.
Yeah.
Right? And so that was, and so being able to start giving yourself credit, being able to learn how to go from feeling like it was always, like in Western, in Western teachings, it's like adversity happens when you made a mistake.
Of course.
Right. And what I've instead come to realize for myself in my life is that there are not necessarily mistakes. There's just strictly learning, right? I wasn't meant to know everything when I was born. I was meant to have, life as an experiential learning experience. And so if I didn't have these catalysts for growth, I wouldn't have grown. I wouldn't have changed, right? And
Yeah.
so reframing, all of these quote unquote problems or mistakes, or it was my fault, into recognizing, no, these were learning opportunities. These were catalysts for growth. And had I not experienced these things, I wouldn't have gone from A to B to C to D to be where I'm at today. Right. And understanding it that way and giving myself that grace and taking the time to, treat everyday life as kind of going to school for like, and I'm going to be learning something. And that to me has been a much more healthy and productive perspective to live my life by.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, it's like self-reflection, and then like just realization, and obviously, like you said, the grace that other people gave you, didn't realize it in the moment, and then you do now. It's like, holy crap. And then you start to give yourself a little bit of like credibility and redirection, so that you can just have a positive outlook on it and be like, okay, that was then. The process of me getting to a new person is the now, and in the future is like, hey, I just got to keep going towards a positive direction, right? It is what it is. It happened, but like if you like I said, if you have the self-reflection and realizing that people were still there for you and gave you support that you didn't even know you needed in the moment, once you actually realize that, it's so much easier to accelerate off of that.
Yeah, and
And
that's where I think that. Oh, I'm
yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. My bad,
no,
Jen.
no worries.
I was gonna say, and
No,
this is where AI is a great tool, right? Because we're all, as I'm talking, we're all individuals, and there's plenty of, we all have our different learning styles, right? So this is where AI can then match with the personalized journey to say, hey, here's an approach to self-awareness, self-understanding based on your learning styles, your goals.
no,
And now then, I think we would all agree, if we had if more people were comfortable in their own skin, comfortable believing in themselves, and confident to share their ideas,
yeah,
those positive attributes then also translate over into their professional environment where they can make a more positive impact too. Just to kind of
yeah.
keep tying things back to, how, it's not an either or, but it's an and how do we get everything to work together, for the betterment of humankind.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, yeah, I agree. In terms of everything tying in together, that leads me to my next thing, I guess I would ask. You shared struggles early on through the process, and even now, just with everything. In terms of everything tying in together, because the personal kind of ties into your professional life as well, whether it's your company, the person that you work for, a company, whatever it is. What are some struggles that you faced early on and that you're still struggling to this day with business, with like, SATH Technology, or even,
Yeah.
your education?
Well, I'll tell you two that are definitely that are just part of it comes with the territory. It's comes with my wiring, I guess is how I
Yeah.
would describe it. So one of them is when you think differently and you see the world differently, you experience it differently than the majority. It's wonderful because it provides you the opportunity to see things and you see where there's, holes and problems to fix.
Yeah.
But however, the challenge is, that not everybody else sees those things.
Yeah.
It can, which leads in my next part is, so seeing it is one thing, but then figuring out how to communicate that as well, and being able to recognize to others how this is why you should care, and this is why you should want to get involved in fixing this or improving this, right? Is really where I struggle a lot of times, and that's also where, frankly, to me, Chat GPT is a phenomenal translator, right? Because I'll put in, hey, here's how I would say it, here's how I would do it. Now I
Yeah.
need you to translate it to me for the average person, for how the majority of people think or word it
Yeah.
or say it, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
and without that translation service, I would have a real struggle with getting some of the points across. And then it also helps me too, because I'm like, oh, okay, I can see how me saying it this way, of course it makes sense to me, this is how I think, right? But
Yeah.
but giving me this other alternative way of saying it, okay, I can see how restructuring it makes it more digestible than for the majority of people. And then I can, adapt that vernacular, and that makes it much easier to be, on podcasts and things like that without, I think we've all have heard somebody who's like an overly technical person. You're like, dude might know what he's talking about, but man, I can't follow him. Or, wow, that's real dry. And so that's a tough follow.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Communication of education, I guess, would be the high level overview of that. And no, I like that you shared that because I I was using ChatGPT for a while and I still do like day to day, but Claude has been pretty good as well in terms of like business stuff. But yeah, even going to like, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, Claude, any of those, there's a ton of them and there's a lot more to come out in the future. Uh, not everybody thinks the same way, not everybody communicates the same way, like you just said. So it's like, hey, here's how I would phrase this and think about it. But just to the average person in this certain bubble or industry or area, how would they, how can I get this across to them in a way that they can understand?
Yeah,
You
and
know?
that's really important to me, who focuses on both the traditional status quo worlds as well as the spiritual worlds. Because now
Yeah.
I can take one message, leverage AI to craft the message for a professional audience,
Yeah.
and then also recraft it for a spiritual audience without me having to do 5 times as much work, right? So,
Yeah.
when we talk about it's not just efficiency. I think but effectiveness, right? I think that that's really where AI can help in being able to support the individuality, is the effectiveness in which we operate.
Yeah. I agree for sure. I like to ask everybody this, whether it's like entrepreneurs or just even my friends sometimes. With both of your businesses, like SATH Technology and the Harmony Health Institute, if you had, let's say you had I'll use this pen as an example. Pretend this pen was a magic wand, right? It's a magic wand, and I want you to use this for, I guess, let's say you had two magic wands because you have two different like the businesses or
Yeah.
companies, right? Startups. Let's say you had two magic wands. Here, let's get another magic wand here. Two magic wands.
All right.
Let's say these two magic wands could each fix one thing in each business. It doesn't matter if it doesn't matter what it is. What would these magic wands fix?
Well, so for Harmony Health, the magic wand would fix that everybody would recognize that they have more gifts, abilities, and wisdom than they've come to recognize about themselves.
Yep.
And uh, from SATH Technology, I would my wish would be, my magic wand, I would wave that and see what would that, it would be that people learn how to use the technology that's available to reclaim their power. And whether that be learning how to gather, how to come together, how to get support for their products, how to overcome barriers, and to realize that they're not nearly how do I say it? Not nearly as limited or helpless as what a lot of the doom and gloom on TV or corporations want people to believe, that they don't have to be dependent, that they can stand on their own and forge their own path.
Yeah. I like that. I feel like those both kind of go together with both of them, like the gifts
Yeah.
of wisdom, and then I feel like it's really just gifts of wisdom because if people realize the certain use cases with technology and what you guys can offer, uh, it'd be a lot better experience for them,
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, you've got social media that can be used to bring large groups together, so you have scale to
Yeah,
create massive change. You've got crowdfunding platforms that allow people to get access to funding that, without having to rely on people at the status quo, right? Because that's how the status quo keeps control, right? And then you've got all over, like, you talk about a variety of products that are out there that allow, one person to do the work of 20 or 30. And so if you've got you got a few good brains, you could literally can have 3 or 4 people that, in the old days would have taken 100 minds to get done and to overcome, that can just be done with a few. And so when
yeah,
you combine those things, you really you can start to recognize how, um, this is a really powerful time for humanity, to kind of come into its own, but it's just a matter of how we choose to invest in our future.
yeah, for sure. No, I agree with the crowdfunding is awesome. Social media presence is huge. Like if somebody watching this right now isn't getting started on social media or they're having like trouble with it, whatever, like to figure it out for sure because not only are you getting more eyeballs on your stuff, but you're just getting like so much more credibility and it's just good, right? Because you can actually get across like you could help because you have certain things, you can put it into whatever AI thing and be like, okay, what can I explain in my content to actually get this across to people that they'll understand? And then just, keep spreading it and spreading it. And it's just like a snowball effect, right? Just a ripple effect. It keeps going on and on, you know?
Yeah, you don't have to be a hostage to the algorithm of social media.
Exactly. Exactly. You can kind of determine it on based on like your industry, right? And a lot of people don't realize that. But so getting towards the end here, I like to do like a quick fire round asking, three different things to just everybody. Now the first one, what would be now this could be throughout your whole life or even now. Okay. What's your
Okay.
favorite book or favorite podcast?
Um, my favorite, hmm, it's hard to, I've always struggled with favorites because I take a little bit of something from everything.
Of course. Yeah.
But what I will say, one book that's always stuck with me is called The Outliers. And and what's always stuck out with me is because one of the things that they focus on is that there's always another layer or two deeper of the narrative that explains the story.
Yeah.
And so like, things they covered was how circumstances played much more of they how much of circumstances played a factor in what somebody's trajectory of life is, as an example. And so,
Yeah.
anyway, different way of, just fosters a different way of thinking and looking at things.
Okay, sweet. Outliers. I have that written down. I've heard of that. I've never read it, but I think somebody else on the podcast has mentioned that book before too. All right, next one. What is a tool that you can't live without? This could be a physical tool like a wrench, or this could be a business system or tool.
How about, can it be a person?
Sure.
Are you sure? Are you because right now I've got like, you know, um, it's funny, a lot of, my interaction with technology and other things, we all have our areas of expertise, but Jen or Sunshine, depending on different people know my pink-haired friend, I wouldn't be able to do half of the things that I'm able to do without her, right? Because um, anyhow, and so she's my favorite product. Um, because I could tell, man, I mean, like I was telling earlier, I mean, between the two of us, I mean, I can get stuff done that before used to take me, subject matter experts, a creative team, a content team, a technologist, a social media person, a strategist, a marketer, and now just, the two of us, can knock out all these things.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't think anybody said that. They're like, can it be a person? That's I like that. I mean, if it helps you accelerate in any area of life, that's awesome. Okay, last one. Um, let's see. I like to try to switch up the questions here, but what's a myth in your industry that you'd like to bust?
Well, first of all, the one I'd really like to bust is that, humans are supposed to fit into this one size fits all model, that we're all supposed to be the same, think the same, have the same physiology.
Yeah.
or that we're limited to, just our five senses. And that, something, when I say five senses, like that can be simple as somebody saying, trusting your gut or your intuition, all the way to, psychism, wherever somebody thinks on that. But I just mean, hey, I just wish people would learn to recognize how their bodies talk to them. And as a result of that, they can use their own inherent gifts and abilities to, it's almost like an internal truth teller, just call it that.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. Now, before we wrap up here, where can people find your work, learn more, even connect with you?
Yeah, from a social media perspective, LinkedIn is where I've been. I really didn't have much of a presence on anything, before. So LinkedIn is there, or if they're interested, sattechnology.com,
Okay.
or, harmonyhealthinstitute.com, are the current places. And, a lot of my articles and things like that as well are on LinkedIn. And that'll
Okay.
definitely give you, different perspectives or ways to look at the world. That's for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. And for everybody watching, I will put that in the link in the description. So go check out all of his stuff there. If a listener can, just takes one thought or action from today's conversation between you and I, what should it be?
What would be the one thing? I'm trying to think, keep it to the AI technology that it's good. I'm going to say you're here to learn and figure stuff out. You weren't meant to have all the answers, and you're here to be an individual. So find the tools, the community that, and being honest with yourself, be honest with yourself, find the tools in the community that support you to be your genuine and authentic self, because that's really where you're going to find your happiness. And when you find that happiness, that's going to spill over into your professional career as well. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I've never believed in work-life balance in the sense that means that they're opposites, right? And they're not. You don't unless you're a cyborg, you don't just leave stuff at the door, right? I mean, you bring your
Yep.
stuff with you. You take work home and you take, home to work. And so the more that we can learn how to have everything work together, support each other, and support our best selves, that's really when life becomes interesting. That's when life becomes fun. That's when we start looking in the mirror and being happy again, with who we see, and giving ourselves, the support that we deserve, or that we're worthy. I hate the word deserve, that we're worthy of.
Yeah. Sweet. That's awesome. I love it. Well, Graham, it's been awesome. I appreciate all the information you shared with not only me, but also my audience as well. Hopefully everybody, well, I'm sure they got some great information and takeaways. I know I did for sure. But for everyone else watching, thanks for getting on. Make sure to drop a like, subscribe, comment your favorite takeaway from this. There's a lot of information in here. And let me know your guys' thoughts on the whole conversation. And we'll see you on the next episode of Vorello Vision.